We are going to talk now about how to graph lines, graph equations, using a very specific method called Slope-Intercept Form. Slope-Intercept Form. Now, so far, hopefully you know what standard form of a linear equation is. Standard form. Standard form looks like this: ax plus by is equal to c. So what you notice about that is, here's the equal sign. On the left side of the equal sign, we have two variables. We have an x and we have a y. They're in two different terms. So a and b and c are just integers, numbers. Positive, negative, whole numbers. Then there's an x term, a y term, and then just a constant term over there. So one method you might know to graph something in standard form, for example, 2x plus 3y is equal to 6. I said graph that line. You might make a table of values or a table of solutions. Make a table where you say, all right, I'm going to pick some numbers for x, plug them in here, and see what y equals. And you make a table. So, for example, x is 2. We would come off to the side here. We would say, all right, 2 times 2 plus 3 times y is equal to 6. Right? So that's that equation. I just stuck that 2 right in there. 4 plus 3y equals 6. Subtract 4 from both sides. 3y is equal to 2. So y would equal 2/3. So what you have there is an x value and a y value, and together you make the solution 2, 2/3, which is a point on the graph, and you could then put that on the graph. That should be familiar with you. You can keep going with that. What we're going to do here is introduce a new method, again, called Slope-Intercept Form. So, Slope-Intercept Form. Slope-Intercept Form looks like this. Y is equal to mx plus b. Y is equal to mx plus b. So what you notice about this one is that here's the equal sign. We still have our x term and our y term, but now the x term is over on the right-hand side. The y term's on the left-hand side. It has no coefficient. M is the coefficient of x, and b is the constant. So these are the numbers. We say that this is solved for y. So let's look at that equation we did a minute ago, which was 2x plus 3y is equal to 6. I might ask you to solve that equation for y. So what we would do there is say, all right, here's my equal sign. Here is my y, so I need to get that y term all by itself first, which means get rid of the 2x. So we subtract it. Then we have the 3y term equals, now here's where I'm going to write it like you might be inclined to write it, 6 minus 2x. Notice those are not like terms, so we can't combine them. They're two separate terms. But then what we really want to do is, on this right side, have the x term first and the constant term at the end. So all I'm going to do is flip-flop these around. I can't just flip them around the negative sign because subtraction isn't commutative. We're going to put the negative in front of the 2x and make it plus 6. So then minus stays in front of the 2 to make it negative. The 6 is positive, so it's plus 6. Now we solve for y by removing the 3. How do we do that? We divide everything by 3. And we go down the line to each individual term and divide them by 3. So we have y is equal to negative 2 2/3 x plus 2. Now notice how I did this. Negative 2/3 x. I stuck the x off to the side instead of putting it on top. You might be inclined to say it's negative 2x over 3 plus 2. That's all right as well. What we care about is, do you know what the coefficient of x is? And in this case, it's negative 2/3. In this case, it's also negative 2/3. The constant is 2. So why do we care? Why do we care about this? How does this help us? Well, when it comes to graphing our equations, that number and that number are really, really, really important. In slope-intercept form, the m is what we call the slope of the line. The b, do this, the b is, we say that the point 0, comma b is the y-intercept. So that point is the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is, where does our line cross the y-axis? Crosses the y-axis here. What is the slope? Well, the slope is, how steep is your graph? How steep is your line? Is it pointing up really high? Is it kind of flat like this? Maybe it's going up, maybe it's going down. So we can learn a lot about what our line looks like from whatever number that is. So in this case, y is equal to negative 2/3 x plus 2. We're going to graph that. I'm going to put my graph right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a nice x-axis and y-axis. So right down the middle here. So this will be our y-axis. This will be our x-axis. So x, y. All right. So the equation that we had, which I will write over here, was y equals negative 2/3 x plus 2. Yeah. Y equals negative 2/3 x plus 2. So the first thing we do is, if we can get our equation to look like this, then we always start with that, which we said the point 0, 2 is our y-intercept. So if we find that point on the graph, 0, 2, right there, we always start with that point. Now, then we use the slope. From wherever that point was, we are going to use this slope. Negative 2/3. We can also think about it as negative 2/3, like that. Now the top number is often referred to as the rise, which means, how does our line change up and down? What's the vertical change? And the 3, the bottom number, is sometimes referred to as the run, which means, how does our line change left and right? So how the top number compares to the bottom number tells us how steep the graph will be. So here our rise is actually going down. It's negative 2. So from our point that we already made, I'm going to count down 2 spaces. And then because our run is a positive 3, I'm going to count right 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. And that's where I can make another point on the graph, right there. Now the nice thing about using this method is we can extend our line. We can do that same thing again, because the slope is the same throughout the entire line. From here I can go down 2 and right 3. Make another point. I can go down 2 more and right 3 more. Now you might be thinking, hey, why are all the points on the right? Can we go to the left? Yeah. We can do the opposite. We could consider this slope to be a positive 2 over a negative 3, which would mean go up 2 and left 3. Up 2 and left 3. And what you find is you have a nice straight